Welcome back. You're watching Business Morning on Channels Television. Let's quickly remind you of a poll we've got running on Twitter, and of course you can also send us an email if you don't have a handle, of course, on Twitter. So the question we're asking is: banks suspend Naira debit card usage for international transactions due to some customers spending above $50,000 limit. Do you agree? The options are yes, no, indifferent, none of the above. You can send your thoughts to our email. Our email is at businessmorning@channelstv.com, and you can also tweet at bizmorning with your thoughts. Achieving good governance is very key, while of course ensuring improved productivity, transparency for any organizations that looking to grow, and it's the same thing as well for government. And so while we're talking about these issues, accountability, resource management, performance, transparency, we're also looking at how all of this plays up for the greater good for not just the public, but of course to investors, especially foreign investors, who they're looking to come in to invest in very critical sectors of the economy. And so that's the focus of this conversation I'll be having next. We're talking about, in this case, state cabinet shakeups. Is it for improved efficiency and productivity? I'll be having a conversation with Okpeyemi Agbaje. He's an economic policy analyst, and he's the CEO of RTC Advisory Services. Good morning to you. Thank you so much for coming on the program. So, talking about good governance, corporate governance, talking about improved accountability and transparency, give us your 1-minute thought on how much this has been achieved, not just at the state level, but generally across most organizations and corporations.
Well, we have an issue with corporate governance in Nigeria. As the chairman of the Convention on Business Integrity, I do hold the opinion that corporate governance in the private sector, proper governance, and lack of corruption in the context of government can be sources of competitive or comparative advantage for businesses and for Nigeria. So, for instance, if say in the context of government or the public space, if we had a reputation for integrity, if we had a reputation that our stock market, for instance, was very transparent, very accountable, the firms, the stockbrokers, everybody did well, if we had a reputation for transparent auctioning of public resources or assets and things like that. So if we wanted to privatize a business, if the public believed, the global and domestic public believed that we would do it transparently and we'll give it to the best qualified entity, we would do better as an economy. It's the same thing in the context of businesses. If a company, a business is believed to be transparent, to be accountable, to be ethical, to be professional, it will tend to do better than a comparative entity who does not share those attributes. So it's a source of, it's not just something we should do because it is good, but it is something that we should do because it actually makes things better for us.
So now, do you think that cabinet shakeups actually improve public service for public good?
Well, yes. I mean, like anything else, if you're running an entity, you must always review where you are. You must review how you've done. You must ask yourself, examine your performance, and you must make adjustments where necessary. If we put that in the context of Nigeria today, I would strongly support some review of the cabinet. I would think that there may be areas of suboptimalities, and it's not just the cabinet. So I would look at fiscal policy, which is cabinet and all of that, but I will also look at monetary policy. Is the credibility of Nigeria's monetary policy appropriate for the times? So that's the role of a leader, that's the role of a system to review itself. Ask yourself, are we doing the best we can? Are there areas of suboptimalities? Is there something I can do to improve performance? I think yes, in the context of today in Nigeria, particularly at the federal level, yes, a credible case for such review may exist.
But you see, the only way a lot of people will understand the reason why you feel this case is credible is if they understand what the performance parameters are. So what are these performance parameters?
Well, I listened to one gentleman talk about this same question, and I think, particularly in the context of today, the parameters are clear. We're in recession. That's not a good thing. And more worryingly, there's no clear roadmap. There's no appearance of a clear roadmap out of recession. If you focus more narrowly, like I said, on Nigeria's economy, one of these parameters that would tell you maybe some adjustment is required is the fact that our economic issues have now, as I've argued, become an issue of confidence. So at first you could have a problem with the price of oil, and then you could have a problem with GDP growth. You can have a problem with political risk. You can have a problem with people perceiving an increase in investment risk. You can have a problem with exchange rates. Those are economic indices that you can review and act on. I suspect that our own conditions today has transcended the economics, purely speaking, in terms of indices. And the major issue now is that there's an absence of investor confidence. There's an absence of confidence by investors in exchange rate policy, in monetary policy, in interest rate policy, in the promised stimulus of government. There's even in the overall economic direction.
Which means that even though right about now it seems as if there's in some states we're having this cabinet shake-up, it should actually transcend to all of the states in terms of looking at performance.
So if leading from where we are, if confidence is being undermined, you then move beyond the strict economic questions of particular micro policies to the question of how do I communicate a change in direction. So there's even a communication issue. How do I signal that I want to take a new turn and that I've identified a problem and I'm determined to fix it? That's one of the things a shake-up in cabinet does for you. So it then helps not just, so of course on the presumption that if you do shake up your cabinet is to bring in stronger, better, more credible people, it then signals to the market that, okay, wait a minute, it's just like the same as a company. If a company was not doing well, its performance was declining, its capital market share price was falling, investors were selling its shares. One of the most important things a board of directors can do is to then ask the CEO, hey, what's going on? And if he does appear that he's not on top of things, you tend to find in more sophisticated markets that when they replace that CEO, the capital market price stabilizes in some cases. And for instance, if you take, say, when Apple brought back Steve Jobs, the market immediately then begins to go up because there's a signal that, okay, now somebody who understands this business is in charge.
So should that be the yardstick? Somebody who understands the business or doesn't putting square pegs in square holes,
Absolutely.
putting round pegs in round holes.
Absolutely.
So are they, these constitutions now, whether for cabinets, whether for boards of directors, are they always in public interest that will promote good governance and, among other things, ease of doing business?
If the motive, it depends on the motive of who's taking the decision. In the case of a corporate, the board of directors, in the case of, say, the federal government, the president, if the motive is right, and therefore, once the motive is right, the motive is to arrest a drift or to stem some suboptimality. Once the motive is right, then you look at, and therefore, I presume if the motive is right, you ensure that the replacements you are making is to improve the situation. So if you're bringing in somebody from outside, you're bringing in somebody that is credible, that the people respect, that the people understand is very strong on the job, then you achieve a positive impact. It's in the interest of the company, it's in the interest of its shareholders, its employees, and other stakeholders. In the case of government, certainly, if you, and like I said, dependent on motive. If your motive is to improve performance, yeah, of course, if your motive is not necessarily focused on performance, you could make a change and the public could look at it and say, this change was just for nepotistic reasons. It could also just be just an appearance of change. It could also just be musical chairs. But if it is based on proper motive, you make the right adjustments, you put the right people, and then the impact begins to show. And then you regain credibility for policy. That's what cabinet changes can do for you.
So you're the chairman of Integrity and Convention on
Convention on Business
Integrity. And, you know, most of the times you have issues with regards integrity in business, integrity by private organizations, integrity in government. How for you should be the best way to address this? Do we constantly need to have a monitoring and evaluation team, you know, look at this?
Well, one of the things we think actually this Convention on Business Integrity is a twin organization. So we have for the private sector, the Convention on Business Integrity, and we are focused on the integrity organization. So we have this twin approach of addressing both private sector corruption and public sector corruption. But the two organizations in one is really one organization. And so we see both sides of it. And the truth, like we have seen, is that there's both a government, the private sector tends to pretend as if corruption is all a public affair, but the truth is that we have issues of integrity in both the public sector and the private space, and they reinforce each other, and they enable each other. So often in the public sector, you need a private accomplice to help you take out the money, whether it's a contractor, whether it's an auditor, whether it's a tax man, whether it's a lawyer, whether it's a real estate man who helps the man who has stolen government money to buy property. There's a bank that helps him transfer the money, and vice versa. On the private sector too, you're often bribing somebody in government to secure an advantage over others. So we see both dimensions of corruption, both public and private. What we think, our most important view, is that we've had a new rhetoric that favors dealing with these things. But we are not so sure that we have a sound strategy for dealing with it. Let me give you the most current example. So most Nigerians are totally in support of cleaning up the judiciary because it seems there's a problem there. But it will be difficult for any responsible Nigerian, certainly not me, to support the approach that we recently saw, in which you barge into the homes of judges at night and you actually discredit in the process the anti-corruption efforts against the judiciary. So it's about, so you may have made the right decision on where you're going, but you also must make the right decision on how you will get there. And it must be an intelligent process by which you sit down, you evaluate the problem, you ask yourself, is there a problem in the judiciary? What is the cause of the problem? How can we address the problem? Is it about appointment of the wrong people? Is it about judicial procedure? Is it about sanctions? Is it about disclosure of the kind of remuneration they have? Is it a process? What should we be doing? Is it focusing on their incomes and tracking their incomes? You know, intelligent analysis and the intelligent solutions. So that's what we would like to see in relation to the question of anti-corruption.
So going forward, how can, you know, composition and character of a cabinet, because in this case that's what we're talking about, how do you think, you know, it can be constituted in such a way that you have a clear idea of what that particular state government is trying to achieve in terms of its policies economically, whether it's with regards infrastructure, whether it's regards promoting, you know, good business between the private sector and the public sector?
Well, I suspect that the foundation is this. What's your policy thrust? So, for instance, if a government has not defined a clear policy thrust, even it becomes impossible for it to have a good cabinet. Because you have to have a cabinet that is good in the context of something it wants to achieve. So whether at the state level, whether at the federal level, you need policy to be clear. And I suspect that, particularly in the case of the federal, you need a clear and coherent economic policy. And then you can then fit people that can help you achieve those objectives.
Okweyemi Agbaje, Economic Policy Analyst and CEO, RT Advisory Services. Thank you so much for joining me on the program and showing us perspectives.
Thank you very much.
Business Morning continues in just a moment. Stay with us.